So NIST has always been kind of our password Bible, the National Institute of Standards and Technology, and they've been publishing for decades what's called the password policy and what's called NIST Special Publication 800-63. And they're the ones that said 2 decades ago, you have to, your password should be long, complex, and frequently changed, right?
Yep.
So that's you name the regulation, PCI DSS, Sarbanes-Oxley, NERC, the Microsoft policy, whatever, that's what everybody follows for 20 years. So then at around 2016, NIST started doing research and inviting professors that had done research and password stuff. And they found out that turns out if your password is long, complex, and has to be changed at preset intervals, that it actually increases the risk to the organization or person that they will be hacked because of that password, because of password reuse across multiple. So it turns out the average person has 170 plus websites and services that they log into in a course of a given year.
Okay.
And they only have 3 to 19 passwords.
Oh.
So they compromise, due to no fault of your own, like Facebook got compromised, Adobe.com got compromised, got my login name and password is out there 10 times, according to the Have I Been Pwned website by Troy Hunt. And it is, and I was like, I didn't even know these, how do you, I joined Adobe so many years ago. How do I know? I was never notified. I don't remember them being hacked, but they were. And my password is out there. I've checked. And then, they're older, but that was the problem, is that if it was reused, somebody gets it on Adobe, goes, let me go see if Roger logs into Amazon that way, and Instagram and Facebook. Turns out there's a really high correlation. So in 2017, September 2017, NIST said, we were wrong, do the opposite. We now recommend don't require complexity, don't require length, do not do forced password changes. Only change it if if you have to. Don't use SMS, don't reuse passwords across different websites, try to use MFA, don't use the SMS one. And so it's called Digital Identity Guidelines. So that's been over 3 years ago. And to date, there is not a compliance audit law regulation that doesn't require the old method. So nobody, as far as I know, nobody, even the government, can follow NIST's recommendation because you will fail an audit, and nobody wants to fail a compliance audit. So everybody's using the method that 20 years of data has shown makes you at higher risk. And when I tell people this, almost all the better computer security experts do not believe me, because it's just common sense that long, complex, frequently changing passwords is going to protect you. Well, turns out that's not what the data shows. Or there's a great friend of mine that's over in Microsoft Research. He said, I can't remember his name. I'm terrible with names, Bill. But he said, you can design a system for 6 million people, but 6 million people are going to respond the way that 6 million people are going to respond. And it may not be the way that you thought. And if that's the case, you need to update your system.
So when you look at right now, multi-factor, what do you want? What's the message you want people to take away from this? Because I keep coming back. I interview a lot of CIOs, and it is very complex for them because they're maintaining systems now, both on-prem, some still at their own data center, and Amazon, Azure, and then a wide variety of SaaS applications. And they've got to authenticate people into these systems, and they're not quite sure how to do it. And what I've heard over the past 2 years is, we use Okta, we use Duo, we use Azure AD, they're hustling their buns off to get these systems installed. And I think they think they're done. Like they're complete.
Yeah. And it turns out it's only reducing risk, probably certainly less than 10% of their overall risk, and probably closer to 2%.
Okay.
But let's go 10%. It's reducing 10% of your risk. So instead of it being a security panacea, the reality is you just got rid of 10% of your risk. Let's give it the maximum possible it can be. You've just nailed 10% of your risk. Well, what's that mean? Well, that means, I need to go find out what that other risk is. And it turns out that if a bad guy can make an end user run a Trojan, hey, here's your new VPN software. We're getting ready to switch VPN software because everybody's at home and been complaining about the Cisco VPN. So we're going to yada, yada VPN. And you need to run this executable and put the new VPN. If you can trick an end user into running an executable, your MFA just doesn't work. If you're not patched, the MFA does not work. And that is 90%. Like I even say like password policy only helps stop two type of password attacks. There's a lot of password attack types out there. There's account takeover and there's guessing and cracking and all this other stuff. Password policy only stops password guessing and password cracking. In order for your password not to be guessed, it just needs to maybe be 8 characters and maybe some complexity. You probably don't even need complexity, but add an uppercase or a character. Sure. No one's going to guess it. Password cracking, they can crack 8-character passwords now. One person, some guy sitting at home, in under 25 minutes. Or under 2 hours. If they use cloud computers, 4 or 5 cloud computers, under 12 minutes. Your password is not safe from password hash cracking until you get at least 16 characters. That's what we know about. We know that somebody has cracked up to 15 character passwords publicly. Maybe the NSA or China can do more than that because they're literally they now have password hash cracking rigs that do 300 billion guesses a second. But this is what I say about password hash cracking. In order for somebody to get your hash, most of the time they had to be domain admin, administrator, or root. Sure. They are already in your system or network with the ultimate keys of the kingdom. Instead of cracking your hash, they could just keylog you. Sure. So the reality is I'm not that worried about password hash cracking because it's game over. They're already in. They didn't need to steal your password hash to do what they're going to do. So it's really password guessing. And for password guessing, your password doesn't have to be that long. Although I do personally believe that it should be changed at least once a year. So if it gets hacked and it's somewhere out there on the internet or the dark web, they're not hacking you 7 years later. Yeah. But so that's my personal thing. So my personal password policy is use MFA. Use MFA where you can, which it turns out is not most places. Then you have to use a password. And if you have to use a password, try to use a password manager because a password manager allows you to easily use long and complex passwords, which helps stop all of those types of attacks. And you can use a different password on every website, and all it costs you is a keystroke or something. If you don't have a password manager, I think passphrases. Roger jumped over the dog. Sure. I was going to ask you about that. Longer is better than complexity because as soon as you throw complexity into it, the human being, if they have to remember it and reuse it, they start to either reuse it on other places or they start to create patterns. So it's Roger jumped over the brown dog 1, Roger jumped over the brown dog 2, Roger jumped over the brown dog 3, and they're using it across the internet. And then when the bad guy finds that pattern, he's like, look at this. This Roger jumped over the brown dog 1 and Roger jumped over the brown dog 7. I bet if I try a couple of these numbers on his current account that it's going to work.